An NFL insider says that Caleb Williams was treated unfairly in his rookie year, which is probably no surprise to most Chicago Bears fans. Tyrique Stevenson finds himself in a unique category in comparisons when it comes down to his ball hawk ability, and Azie Trapillo is compared to Kyle Long. We're going to talk about all that and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content today, y'all. And yeah, this one comes from NFL insider Hub Arkush, who was on CHGO, who said this. I thought he got treated unfairly on his rookie year. He didn't have a bad rookie year. If you look at his numbers, the record was bad, but that's because the team was bad. That's because the coaching was bad. But if you look at his performance, he didn't play badly. He didn't play like Jaden Daniels did. He didn't take over the league, but he couldn't with what he had around him. I'm excited with what I saw from his rookie year now that they've added so much talent around him. And they added what I think is a much better coaching staff. I'm pretty excited about what I think you're going to see from him this year. Now, you know you have your Caleb Williams haters. We see it all in the Chicago Bears fandom, which, you know, it is what it is when it comes down to that. But not to say that Caleb Williams doesn't have things that he needs to grow and evolve on as a quarterback in this league. He absolutely does. He has to be better at attacking the middle of the field. He has to be better at more accurate. He has to be better at not holding on the ball to sometimes. But for people that act like, and, you know, some people I've even seen comments here like 68 sacks means you're a bust, which it's just honestly just dumbass thinking when it comes down to it. You guys know I'm not really being nice to dumbasses anymore this season. Not to say that you can't have legitimate, like there are legitimate criticism, but some of the thinking around stuff is just stupid. But Caleb he had a respectable year last year. Now he has to be better as a quarterback. And that's going to be no matter how his season was in year one, he was going to have to be better in year two unless he somehow had the most amazing season and won a Super Bowl, which did not happen, right? Clearly. So Bears going 5-12 last year. You know, you can blame whatever you want to blame on that. And it was a mixture of everything. I'm somebody who I don't like to blame anything on just one aspect of any team or anything like that. Like, yeah, Caleb could have been better. The offensive line could have been way better. Our play calling could have been better. Our defense could have been better. There's a lot of things that went to last year being as disappointing as what it was. But I think the overarching thing just comes down to is that like the Bears have put Caleb in an even better situation. So many people talked about last year, Caleb Williams walking into so much better of a situation than a lot of number one overall picks did. And, you know, cool. But now they've increased and improved that situation even more so now in year two. And so a lot of it's going to be looking at what Caleb Williams can do with Ben Johnson and how Ben Johnson can make Caleb a better quarterback, how Caleb thrives or not in Ben Johnson's system. And you're just trying to get to a place of, again, this team being respectable, this team coming out and competing, and this team coming out and playing and fighting hard. And that's really all you really need from this team. If you can do those things consistently, this should be a much better and improved football team next year. Now, you know, we got a lot of ways that we need to go and things that we need to prove to compete in our division and the NFC overall. But, you know, that's a lot going to come down to on the football field. There's nothing that you're going to say on paper right now that clearly puts the Bears in, you know, so much of a better spot than what they were last year. They're going to have to come out and prove that this new talent was worth it. They're going to have to come out and prove, you know, a number of things that they're going to have to do. And so that comes down to what this team can show. And if this team can show it, great. If they don't, even more so, it's going to be a little bit difficult and tough. So, you know, we'll see what this team ends up doing. But Caleb is going to have a much better situation. I do think that, you know, with whatever we heard about coaching and Caleb, like one thing that's clear, if you are an objective football watcher, you saw where the coaching that was on this team would have held anybody back. I'm sorry, it would have held anybody back. Shane Waldron was terrible objectively while he was here. Matt Eberflus was not a leader. While he had some good moments defensively, we even saw him lose the range that he had on that. That was one of the things he had the most kind of put in his belt was the fact that he had, you know, stopped the decline defensively, but it was right back there last year with injuries, of course, and things like that. So now with a better coaching staff and just overall better talent, better weapons on this team that fit a more inclined coaching system, hopefully we see the benefits of that. This is going to be a year where there's going to be a lot of talk around Caleb once the preseason starts. We're not even going to make it to the regular season. The Caleb haters are going to be ready to go snap one of the preseason. If Caleb Williams does not, look like the most amazing quarterback in the world, they're going to be ready. And that's just what it is. That comes with the territory. It's not even something that I say to knock anybody. It comes with the territory, especially when you're a Chicago Bears quarterback. So all that's going to be there. Some of it's warranted. Some of it's a little bit exaggerated, but it all comes down to what Caleb Williams shows on the football field. If he shows enough on the football field, he's going to be all right. If he doesn't, it's going to be tough. It's going to be ugly. It's going to be disgusting. And that's what we're trying to avoid as Bears fans, is being in that area yet again like we always are. Hopefully we can get there, though. You guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. I want to talk a little bit about Tyrique Stevenson up next, right? Tyrique Stevenson, who a lot of Bears fans talk about so badly, like he's just terrible. We even had a voicemail from Darius in which I then went on to talk about, Tyrique Stevenson and where he actually ranked in the league. That doesn't mean that he didn't have some blown assignments, things like that. But I think when you look at the way that we're moving to more press coverage, how Tyrique Stevenson actually thrived in that when he was in Miami, and now he's going to be able to come over there and do a little bit of that for Dennis Allen. When you look at Tyrique Stevenson, over his 2 years as a starter, that's what he's been. 6 interceptions, one that was returned for a touchdown, 28 pass breakup, 3 forced fumbles, and that's why he's playing on the opposite side of Jalen Johnson. Pro Football Focus, according to them, Tyrique Stevenson is one of just 6 defensive backs who have recorded 20-plus forced incompletions and 5-plus interceptions since 2023. He's in there with Derek Stingley Jr., Reek Wolin, Brian Branch, Darius Williams, and Paulson Adebo. That is putting him in a category of ball hawks that we just don't talk about him like he's in. Now, part of that also is because of the team that he's on. It's great to be a ball hawk, but if you're that on a losing team, who's really going to be looking at you? And that goes a part into it as well. But Tyrique Stevenson, as I've been saying to people who bring him up, is not to say that he's a perfect cornerback, because he's not. But I feel like a lot of the conversation around Tyrique is almost the same way it was before Jalen Johnson and before he got his contract extension. There were so many people that I talked to day in and day out. They're like, Jalen Johnson's not that good. Why isn't Jalen Johnson that good? Because he doesn't get a huge number of interceptions. Like, you realize that so much more goes into being a cornerback than just if you're getting a huge number of interceptions, right? Then he had that year where he had the most interceptions of his NFL career, and then it quieted some of that down. I think people then started realizing, like, okay, there is something more to Jalen here than maybe what we realized on paper and things like that. Tyrique Stevenson, yesterday, me, Bobby, and C-Dub, we talked about players that were on the roster bubble, according to us. And C-Dub brought in Tyrique Stevenson. Not necessarily he was on a threat to not make the roster, but more so a threat to lose his starting spot. To Zay Frazier, you got Terrell Smith there. You got the players there that are very good players. Like Zay Frazier, I think is going to be really great under Dennis Allen's system. But I think there's now, because of the way that the season went, and I understand it, there's been a lot of now talk around Tyrique like he's some terrible player that he's not. The Hail Mary play was bad, and his confidence was clearly shaken after that. You can't take away from that. But now under this new coaching staff with a new change of style and defense, he kind of gets a fresh start. But a fresh start that he didn't really need as far as his production, but he needed it as far as the optics around things. And I think that's going to play a big part into this. The way that Dennis Allen likes to prioritize his defensive backs, Tyrique is in a sink or swim situation. He's going to have an opportunity to really show a lot of what he can bring at that cornerback position and how he can perform. And I hope that he thrives in that. I'm never mad at a player if anybody's saying, well, prove it to me on the field. Cool, great. Because if you can't prove it on the field, then what are we doing, right? So Tyrique is a player, much like a lot of players on this defense, along with Javon Dexter, Tremaine Edmonds, Montez Sweat, they have a lot that they need to come into this season proving. And whether it's just optics, whether it's situational, whether it's whatever, how you want to look at it, natural growth for a player like Javon, is that there is still a lot of things right now that need to happen with this team that need to, that are players that need to take advantage of this opportunity of a new coaching staff to really show how much better you can be. Right. And that I think is gonna help a lot of guys. And Nicole Kmet maybe could be one if you want to mention one on the offensive side of this ball. So the team as a whole is going to have doubts. Any 5-win team, no matter who you are, you're going to have doubts on your team. It just is what it is. We can talk about all the potential in the world. You won 5 games last season. You were the only team in your division to not have a winning record. Guess what? Yeah, you're going to have some doubts around your team and around your players, and that's earned via the way that you did not execute. That just is what it is. That's the reality of the situation. I don't know anybody who should be mad at that if we're talking about the reality of it. But the players, more so than anything, should take this as an opportunity to go out there and show and prove, right? Just go out there and show and prove. What do you have now? Like, what have you learned from your mistakes last year? Tyrique Stevenson, what have you learned from the growing opportunity that you had where veterans and other players and coaches had to pull you to the side? They had to talk to you, and that's fine. That's what a team is. That's what a team should be. You should be able to hold each other accountable. So much that has gone wrong for the Bears over the years has come down to the fact that we don't have accountability here in Chicago. We haven't had the coaching staff that can hold players accountable, and a lot of players that we've had here have been out for their own. So now that seems to be something that's changing culturally around the Chicago Bears, we're still establishing that culture, but it seems to be changing. Having players that can hold each other accountable, hold themselves accountable, right, is going to be a big part of what this team could be going forward into the future. And let's hope that it works out for him. So Tyrique Stevenson in just great category when it comes down to it, but let's not act like he's not facing opposition. And so with the new coaching staff, as much as that may offer new eyes on things, that offers new eyes for everybody. That means that some players that maybe you were ahead of because of the last coaching staff, you may not be ahead of those players as it goes forward into. Like, talk about Terrell Smith, Zay Frazier. These are guys that are going to be coming in fighting for reps and snaps. And I think there's going to be more than enough to go around because of how Dennis Allen likes to use the defensive backs. But Tyrique Stevenson, it's time to prove your worth for this coaching staff and hopefully for a team that's getting a lot more wins than what they did last year with the Chicago Bears. Let's hope that that's the case. All right, moving on. Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet talked a little bit about the difference between Ben Johnson and past Bears coaches, which Cole Kmet has seen his share of them when it comes down to it, right? Kmet talked, and he said this. They've all been different. They're all different in many ways. I think what sticks out with Ben and the staff just in general is how detail-oriented they are. You can feel in the meetings, and they're relentless on the details. I think that's something that may be a little bit unique from what I've had in the past. Not saying other coaches weren't detailed, but it's like an obsession. The details, you can feel that from him. He just can't let it go. You feel that from him, whether it's on the field or in a meeting room. He brings that with him wherever he's at. Attention to details, right? When you're somebody that's a creative offensive mind like Ben Johnson, you don't get there without attention to detail. And that's a huge part in all of this, is that Ben Johnson's attention to detail, not just in how the plays are executed, but the finer details in how certain players like to be used. How can you combine these skill set from these players to create a mismatch over here on the other side of the field? Right? How you line people up, like those are things that are hugely important when you want to be a detail-oriented coach and you want to force other teams to react to what you're doing offensively. You cannot be a great offensive mind without having a level of detail. I'll say a great mind in general when it comes to the X's and O's of the sport if you're not detail-oriented. So to hear that Cole Kmet, one of the things that stood out to him with the different coaching staff that he's seen is two versions of the coaching staff under Matt Eberflus, a version under Matt Nagy before Eberflus even came, and now this coaching staff under Ben Johnson. Cole Kmet has seen a lot in this time. And so for a player for what's to stick out about a new coaching staff so early on is the details, the fact that he obsesses over the details, and that to be something that stands out so much that when you talk about it is one of the first things that you bring up. That says a lot to me personally. Now, we got to see the detail-oriented and the results of that on the field. But one thing with Ben Johnson is that when you look at how Ben Johnson's talked about, and for a lot of the major outlets, one of the reasons why that they talk so much more positively about the Bears, or they have a more positive outlook on what this Bears team could be, a lot of it starts with the coaching staff. It's not that a lot of if you look at the way things are written, that they're like, oh my God, Caleb Williams is going to take a leap to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They're not saying that. They're not looking at it and saying, oh, Montez Sweat and Javon Dexter are going to form one of the most dangerous duos on the defensive line in the league. They're not saying that. They're looking at the Dennis Allens, right? And what Dennis Allen brings schematically to this Bears team. They're looking at the Ben Johnsons and what Ben Johnson brings as far as in maximizing the talent that is on this team and getting every ounce of the talent out of it, whereas the previous coaching staff wasn't necessarily able to do that. They're looking at those things. And as long as you see that from this team, those are the things that are going to help you get to a place and to a point to where you're just performing better, right? And that you're able to bust through those expectations. And as a team, you're now looked at as saying, hey, That Bears team, that's a dangerous fucking team. And that's what that's what we want to get to as the Chicago Bears, right? So the new coaching staff and what they brought to this team as far as a change in mindset, change of the way that we're viewed, all that stuff matters. Now we just got to see if it's going to pay off into something that we can tangibly build off of. And let's hope so. Ryan Poles locked in for 5 years. Ben Johnson here for 5 years, right? Kevin Warren's going to be here for a while. So now that you have those guys that are in that place, right, you have now that alignment between your front office and coaching staff that the Bears have missed on for the better part of 2 decades, have not had consistent alignment between the front office and the coaching staff. You now have that alignment. So what needs to happen with that? Now you need to show us that now that you have that, what can you build with it? Because if you have alignment and all you're doing is aligned to a path to hell, where are we going with it? I don't know. So we shall see what's going to happen with that. Overall, if the Bears can find their path to being respectable in the league again, let's see what happens there. Last time before we get up out of here today, Azie Trapilo is drawing some crazy comparisons when it comes down to it. Adam Johns, of course, of CHGO, was talking about it. He said this. On the field, Ozzy Tripilo looks like Kyle Long. Why do I want to say Young? Kyle Long. It's not just his jersey number, but physically. He's built like Kyle Long. He moves like Kyle Long. We know how good Kyle Long was here, albeit for a different position for the Chicago Bears. When you look at Kyle Long, he played left guard for 7 seasons, mostly with the Bears, of course. He was with the Kansas City Chiefs a little bit, but never played a snap for the Chiefs. When he played in Chicago, what he brought to this team as far as just being that nasty offensive lineman, a 3-time Pro Bowl selection. He was named the 2nd team All-Pro in 2014. Listen, if Azie Trapilo, and this is why when I've said things like Azie Trapilo's ceiling, maybe Braxton Jones's, Azie Trapilo's floor, maybe Braxton Jones's ceiling, because Azie Trapilo has something about it that you look at and like, I know it's easier to kind of categorize it as this, but an it factor. That's there when you look at who Azie Trapilo is, and that's clearly who the Chicago Bears are hoping Azie Trapilo is going to be for this team as well. And so if Trapilo can turn into a fan favorite, which he already has his supporters, right? He has guys that look at him and they say like, this kid has it. We've heard it all throughout training camp. When the Bears drafted Azie Trapilo, there was so much just notable a way that he was viewed because of what he was able to do. Doesn't allow sacks. You can't bull rush him. Not to say that he's a perfect prospect like nobody is, but he is somebody that brings so much of what we've been lacking at that left tackle position with a ceiling that's out of this world. So Trapilo is somebody that I think also he fits the type of lineman that Ben Johnson likes to have. He likes to have those big but athletic offensive linemen, right? I know you don't typically use the word athletic to describe offensive linemen, but that really is the best way to talk about how Ben Johnson likes his offensive linemen to be under his team and in his system. You now have an opportunity to have that here in Chicago. And so if the Bears really do, have something special here in Azie Trapilo, great. We've been lacking it. We've been missing it. We need this offensive line to get to a place. But you know what brings me even more confidence in Azie Trapilo hitting whatever type of comparisons, comps that you want to make for him, is having Dan Rushar here. Dan Rushar is going to be so important for these young guys. Kieran Amagaje, Darnell Wright, Ozzy Tripilo, Luke Newman, right? A guy that I think needs to be talked about a little bit more. Theo Benedict, a guy that the Bears are really high on as well last year, so much that they kept him around. Having Dan Rushar here to be part of that development at the start of some of these guys' career, still at the start even for Darnell Wright, even though he's going into year 3, but still very early into his career. That's the type of thing and type of coaching you need around those players so that they can hit that ceiling that you hope that they're going to have here for the Bears. A Kyle Long comparison is a big one, and that's one that's really going to hit with a lot of Bears fans and understanding the how much that really says about what a player could end up being. Now, Johns is a guy that he's made some comps before as well, that you look back on and you're like, all right, Johns got a little, he became a little bit too much of a fan there. We all do it. I do it. C-Dub does it. Bobby does it. Steve-O does it. We all do it, right? Because we're fans of this team first. And that's going to naturally lead you to sometimes believing in some things where it's a little bit of questions at, right? But I think Azie Trapilo offers a really good situation. And he's coming into also a situation where you're having veterans on the interior of that offensive line. So they're going to help you. They're going to help jumpstart that development. Joe Tooney is going to help with that. Jonah Jackson's going to help with that. Drew Dahman in his performance at that center position is going to help with that. So you add all that to Dan Rushar, Ben Johnson as well, and you're now putting yourself in a situation where not only do you have a veteran offensive line on that interior, but you have guys that are developing and they have crazy ceilings as well. And hopefully you can build something meaningful and sustainable over time here in Chicago. That's the hope. That's at least what I hope for. We just got to see if Chicago can execute it. But you guys can let me know how you feel on that down below. That's my time. Make sure you guys are following us at Chi Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, but Bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.